This is Chris Collinsworth. Be sure to check out the PFF College podcast as our experts provide insight on all the league's top stories. Every game, every player, every play. Download and subscribe on iTunes or your favorite provider.
What is up? Welcome back to the PFF podcast. A special one here. We hinted at it a few weeks ago. We're going to be doing draft podcasts all the way up until the draft. I'm Mike Renner, as always, and joining me on these late week draft podcasts is none other than Steve Palazzolo. You guys know him. He used to be on the PFF podcast. Our quarterback podcast guru, our college podcast guru. Steve, how you doing today?
Doing great, and it's good to be back again. I made my return a few weeks ago, the Senior Bowl, back to the NFL podcast, and it's nice. We're going to be doing this every week, right?
Yeah, every week. This is going to be the end of the week podcast. It's going to be draft-centric. The beginning of the week podcast is still going to be Sam and I, so if you love Sam, you're still going to get your fix of Sam, but
if you love Steve,
that's why you're
here.
In luck. So let's kick it right off. Go to one of the things that's bothered me a lot over the years about draft coverage, and that is mock drafts, and namely how we number mock drafts. Steve, you know that this is my biggest pet peeve in the whole entire draft community.
Oh my God.
And it is mock draft 1.0, 2.0, 3.0, that naming convention. Steve, why do you name your mocks that? Because
this is where we're starting. This is where we're starting draft season right now.
We lost all our listeners already, but no. So you name that. Software companies put out software versions 1.0, but then they have like a 1.1 to like be a minor incremental change. You never have a 1.1, do you? Do you put a 2.1?
We did last year, I think, during draft week. I gave whatever it was, 7.1. I made a couple last minute changes during the week.
I don't think
you build it in for flexibility.
Okay.
So there can be a 3.1 if necessary. Last year, I think we had to make some changes because of the trade, the big trade, the trade up to go get Jared Goff. So maybe you just released a mock, then there's a massive trade, and you want to make it 5.1 instead of just 5.0. It's built-in flexibility.
So I've never seen one. I don't recall that ever happening with us, but maybe it did.
It may not have happened.
But calling it Volume 1, Volume 2 sounds cooler. Makes it more like a rap album.
You want Roman numerals? What do you want?
Like Volume 1, like mock draft Volume 1.
Volume 1?
That's not a good idea.
That sounds ridiculous.
I
can't believe this is what we're starting draft season discussing.
All right, let's move on to something then more near and dear to our hearts, and that is we're going to be doing this draft season basically. What you are our draft coverage guide, Steve. What are we going to be doing all the way up until the draft? Give us the plan of attack. Give us why we're doing this podcast in the first place.
Okay, yeah. So we'll do the weekly podcast, and that'll help explain just where we are in all of our evaluations. And everybody knows us as the people who grade every play, every player on every play. And that's a pure production grade. So we do that for the NFL. We do that for college. So we have grades on these guys for 3 straight years, 2014, 15, and 16. Now the process is more about interpreting those grades. What does that production grade mean? Who did it come up against? Where did a guy win? Where did a guy lose? So we're in the process of building scouting profiles for all of these top prospects. You're a big part of that entire process. We have another group going through and adding some extra data to the process, a little bit, ball location charting for quarterbacks, some other stuff for wide receivers and corners. So we're going to add even extra context to it. So I think that's the big, push right now for us is adding context to these play-by-play grades that we have, where we have, thousands of snaps for some guys, just adding that extra level of detail and then slotting them, figuring out where we value them from a draft perspective.
Yeah, I think that's the biggest thing that I want to convey is the fact that we have these grades on guys, but that in no way is that us saying that's what they're going to be at the next level, because there's so many factors, especially at the college level, that can impact the grades in different ways. The biggest one being level of competition. And we have never, normalized for level of competition at any point in PFF's history. So if you're going up against the worst tackle in the NFL, and you beat them, it's the same as beating the best tackle in the NFL in our grading system. So that's a big thing.
And there are reasons we do that.
Yeah, there are very good reasons, because, the best tackle in the NFL, if he's hurt and all of a sudden, has a really bad stretch of games, is that, as meaningful, what's the normalization factor then that you're going to put on? So
also,
why,
but also at the NFL level, I think there's value in beating up that bad tackle, right? If you beat
he's
a bad
still
tackle,
an NFL player,
right? He's still an NFL player. You still, if you get 10 pressures on him, that's a big part of winning the game. You don't dismiss it and say, well, he's a bad tackle. That's a big part. You want to dominate that bad player. I think with college, it's more difficult because sometimes that bad player is never going to sniff the NFL, and you just have to figure out how much is that worth.
Yeah, you have guys. I just remember last year, someone like Emmanuel Ogbah, graded off the charts in our system, but he'd never played against a guy who was going to be in the NFL. And none of those grades ever came against a guy who will be playing at the next level. So then you have to just, in the end, it comes down to traits versus production, that sort of balance that you want to,
traits, buzzwords.
Traits versus, we'll get to buzzwords later, but traits versus production, that sort of balance that you want to strike and to find what actually matters and what doesn't matter. So that's what we're here for. That's that's our whole draft process. We have some cool things coming up for you, Steve. You can describe some of those for us?
We do, and a lot of it is in production right now. We're going to have a draft guide like we had last year, bigger and better. Last year, I think we did we had a fun time putting that together, which was a combination of our player notes, our unique signature stats, and again, just adding context to all of these players in the draft class. So we're going to have that, but we're also going to have an online product. I think we're calling it Draft Pass. Still in the works. Hopefully right around the Combine or just after the Combine, we'll have something available for fans to purchase, to get involved in. And, we'll have some unique PFF data for everyone to just get a really good feel for the entire draft class. So a lot of good things planned. Stay with us over these next few months. It's draft season, guys. We're ready to go.
So let's actually get into the players then, and let's start with the position I wanted to start with is the edge class, because to me this is one of the best edge classes maybe of all time, just in terms of pure talent at the top. You compare this edge class to last year's edge class, where it was Joey Bosa, who's not quite an edge. He's more of an interior guy now in the NFL to some degree.
He's an edge.
I guess he's an edge. He plays over a tackle still. You had Shaq Lawson go in the first round, and then that was it. There really wasn't an edge class last year that was anything to speak of in terms of talent at the top. This class, though, is absolutely loaded. I just go down the list of guys who could very well end up in round one when all is said and done. You have Myles Garrett, Derek Barnett, Solomon Thomas, Tim Williams, Carl Lawson, Malik McDowell, Charles Harris, Taco Charlton, Tack McKinley. You just have this absolutely loaded class, and I just think you really can't go wrong with some of those guys at the top.
Yeah, it's, like you said, the complete opposite of last year's class, where based off those numbers that the guys that you just said, I don't know if Shaq Lawson is even in that league with these guys. Shaq Lawson, more of a run-first type of player, pretty good pass rusher. Some of these guys like Tim Williams, Carl Lawson, they can get after the QB. Last year we had a guy like Noah Spence, borderline first-round type of player, ends up going in the second.
DPR type of guy.
And he's a pure pass rusher who, in this mix, Noah Spence probably gets lost there too.
Yeah.
So completely different. Whereas last year, I think it was more the interior defensive linemen. Last draft class, you did a nice job of breaking down where those guys fit. Yeah. You did a nice job where those guys fit. This class is similar, but it's the edge guys. So these guys, we have guys that are really good run defenders, guys that are good, just designated pass rush type of guys who maybe have some potential as run defenders. Guys that fit 3-4 outside linebacker mold, guys who fit more 4-3 defensive end mold. All sorts of different types of edge rusher in this class.
Let's start at the top then. And Myles Garrett, Derek Barnett, those guys have been in our grading system back and forth their entire careers in the SEC there. Myles Garrett, Texas A&M, Derek Barnett at Tennessee. Who are you taking of those two? Why? And can you go wrong in that decision?
I think you can kind of go wrong. I mean, Garrett is the better, more pure edge defender. I think he's got the look and the traits and everything that you're looking for. Maybe the bend. Might even have the bend that you're looking for. Both of them do, though. We'll talk about bend in a little bit, but Myles Garrett, from a pure production standpoint, has been outstanding since he stepped onto campus in 2014, as has Derek Barnett. I mean, their production grades are as close as it gets for just 3 years, neck and neck the entire time. But I do think Garrett has a little bit more next-level potential. He can add power to his game. As a pass rusher right now, he already has the burst you're looking for. He has everything you're looking for, but he can even add more power to his game. He's gotten stronger every year. I think he can get even stronger at the next level. And he's improved greatly as a run defender, where I think Barnett was always a better run defender, and then he improved as a pass rusher over these last couple of years. So I think Garrett has everything you're looking for in a pure edge rusher. I don't know that he ever gets to that Khalil Mack. Do you see? I don't think as a run defender, I don't think he's going to be Khalil Mack, Von Miller. But as a pass rusher, do you see him? I mean, I see him as one of the top edge rushers in the league.
Is in terms of potential, unbelievable potential. I'm not sure he comes out and starts dominating right away like we saw from a guy like Von Miller. Right. I think he comes out and or even Joey Bosa. I think comes out solid right away, and then just that career arc is going to be shoot through the roof. I think he just has, like you said, traits that you can't teach. He's 6'5", whatever, with incredibly long arms and probably going to run a 40 that's going to look crazy at his height and weight. So you
connect that
burst off
production.
the scrimmage, and then he's done it for now 3 years. I said earlier this week I haven't watched much of his junior tape, but I had watched him as a freshman, watched him as a sophomore, and I was like, do I even need to? Like, I know if I'm have the first overall pick that's the guy I want, because he's so absolutely dominant in terms of what he can do at a premium position in the NFL. I just think, he's the guy I want at the top of the draft.
So definitely love Garrett at the top. He's the number one player right now on the PFF draft board. With Derek Barnett, I just think he's a tick below when it comes to that whole upside factor. I think he might be a little bit more maxed out. The thing that stood out to me, when he stepped into the SEC in 2014, he played the run like a man. I mean, he stepped in with power and strength in the best offensive line conference, I think, in college football in the SEC, and he played the run, and he played the run extremely well. So that was what was most impressive to me about Barnett. And then he's improved as a pass rusher. Jumps the snap a little bit, gets a good get off, which I know a lot of people don't think translates to the next level, because you're dependent on some outside factors that are more than just beating the man in front of you. But Barnett's production, like I said, has been right up there with Garrett. So I think he is a top 10, top 15 type of player, and I think he's a guy that the draft community and maybe the NFL is going to overthink, because he doesn't have the pure look of a Myles Garrett.
So if those are the unquestioned top two for us at the moment, who's a guy in that next group that I kind of listed off earlier that you would say, I like him, or I like him more than probably the general public, or not necessarily your next guy overall in terms of talent, but one guy you're like, I like him probably more than the rest of everyone else?
Well, I think a lot of people like Tim Williams, but I think he's going to translate as an edge rusher at the next level. And he has not played a lot of snaps against the run. And I think I've held that against him through the years. But when you watch his run snaps, I'm not going to use traits again. He shows what you need against the run. He'll jack up some blockers. He's got really long arms, and he can win blocks, and he can shoot gaps in the run game, even though he's played only a handful of snaps, literally a handful of snaps against the run during his
That's a very important designation. The fact of is a guy a designated pass rusher because maybe he doesn't play the run as well as everyone else on his team, which is probably Tim Williams is, that was probably why he wasn't out there down after down after down the first couple of years at Alabama, versus a guy like someone like Shalik Calhoun, who just probably will never play the run well. Just doesn't have the ability, doesn't have the strength, doesn't have the physicality to necessarily play the run well, even if he's going to be good as a pass rusher.
Right. Calhoun never showed that power.
He never showed that. But Tim Williams, if you show it, my thing is, if you can do it once in the run game, if you can do it, if you show that on tape, you can be coached, you can be taught to do it again and again and again. So I have no issue with him playing 900 snaps in the NFL. I have every down player is what I'm saying at the next level.
I'm still seeing him as more of a designated pass rusher, but I don't think he's necessarily a liability against the run. And I think you're going to if you compare Tim Williams to Carl Lawson played the run, but didn't necessarily do it well. He never graded among the top run defenders on the edge in the entire country. And as much as I like Carl Lawson as a pass rusher, I think he has to answer the similar questions as Tim Williams. Can you play the run? Are you going to be an early down guy? Because Lawson didn't make many plays against the run. He had one of the lowest run stop percentages in the entire nation the last couple of years. He can get blocked. He gets sucked upfield sometimes. So I don't know that I think Lawson has to answer the same questions, but just for different reasons.
And my biggest thing about when you get to the NFL as an edge, the biggest thing is in terms of run defense is discipline. If you're not making bad plays, if you're not letting guys outside of you,
don't lose contain.
Don't get absolutely owned on a play. I think Williams more than does that well enough, and he has the ability to if it does bounce outside, chase a man down. So I'm not worried about him at the next level.
Yeah. So just to sum up Tim Williams though, he's gotten pressure on 27% of his rushes over the last 3 years. The average college edge rusher gets pressure about 10% of the time. So he's at 27%, which is absurd. He first caught our eye in 2014. He only had about 100 snaps, and he was still getting pressure at that ridiculously high rate. He was actually at 30% coming into the season. He only played a couple hundred snaps a season, and this year he finally maxed out. It was closer to it was 429 snaps. That was his career high, which is still very much a part-time player, but he kept his production. 22 sacks, 19 QB hits, 83 hurries in very limited time. Only 685 snaps that we have over the last 3 years.
And he's also the kind of guy who can win the edge and close on quarterbacks, which will translate more of your pressures to sacks, which has some value. In our grading system, it doesn't really impact anything. We treat sacks and pressures somewhat equally, but
I mean, finishing
is important at the next level, and he's the kind of guy who will finish more than someone like a Brandon Graham, who's just
finishes late,
collapsing pockets. So
finishes late.
You probably stole my guy there in terms of someone I like a lot in that next. But I will mention this other guy who did not have a good year whatsoever, and it's Malik McDowell from Michigan State. I know he played a lot of defensive tackle at Michigan State, and some people see him there inside the next level. I love what he can do on the edge, though. He may be a little larger. He might be a bigger edge sort of guy. He might be a guy who plays right over the outside shoulder of a tackle. But I think him going up against tackles is where he's going to win the most, where he's going to be the least liability against the run, where he's going to win against the run, I think. I love what he can do there. I love his hands, and I just love his balance, what he's got there for a guy at that height.
You're a big balance guy.
I'm a biggest balance guy.
That's your buzzword.
I think balance, staying on your feet, is very important in the NFL. You don't make a lot of plays when you're on the ground.
What about Henry Anderson? He still makes plays.
It's okay. There's a difference between going to the ground to make a play and going to the ground just because you suck and you can't and because you can't hold on to a block. So
That's true.
There's an important distinction to make there, and I think Malik McDowell is on the right side of it.
So McDowell, he had that beautiful rush against Mike McGlinchey, Notre Dame left tackle, who I think is great. He beat him at least
Ryan Ramczyk twice too.
Ramczyk's our top offensive tackle on the draft board right now. Wisconsin
that was actually
left tackle.
Those few rushes are what convinced me, because going up against top end talent like that and beating him the way he did so soundly, that's eye opening.
Funny that we were just talking about Tim Williams wasn't in last year. That Jack Conklin of Michigan State, it was his 5 or 6 successful rushes that convinced you that Jack Conklin is an NFL pass protector, and he ends up as our top right tackle in the league.
That's what ended up convincing, because I had reservations. They didn't do a lot of pure pass sets in Michigan State, a lot of play action, a lot of stuff to protect that O-line, a lot of full slides, and then when they had to 2-minute drill against Tim Williams, he shut him down. 5 pure kick slide pass protections, all 5 he won. So that a few snaps against a really good player can, sway my, because...
Well, who shut down Tim Williams was Forrest Lamp, but that's a whole different discussion right now.
We'll get to the offensive line in a few weeks here, but maybe we're convinced ourselves not to like Tim Williams.
Yeah, I know. Or Tim Williams getting shut down. No, it's just so rare that Tim Williams got shut down. We remember the couple linemen that had success against him.
Any other guys that you would say from that, even maybe go a second tier below, a second or third rounder out of this group that you'd say, I'm interested in seeing, I would like him if I got him in the second or third?
Well, Takk McKinley, I don't know where he ends up slotting in. You've got this deep class, UCLA defensive end, and McKinley first caught our eye 2 years ago in similar fashion as Tim Williams. And I think this is the beauty of the PFF system. The guy only played about 100 snaps in 2014. He created pressure at a ridiculously high rate. We put him on our breakout player list in 2015. He had a very good 2015 and then a very, very good 2016. Really did break out even further this past year. So I think McKinley has a role. I don't know that he's a first-round prospect in this group. With this huge group, I don't know that he's a first-round prospect, but I think he can get after the quarterback, move around the defensive line a little bit.
I'll give one name, and it's not a great name. It's not going to be – I don't think he's ever going to be a great player, but I like Hunter Dimmick, the edge guy from Utah.
Not even invited to the Combine.
Not invited to the Combine, not invited to the Senior Bowl. But you look at his production this last year at Utah, ridiculous. He hits all the white cliches. I'll say it. He's a high effort, high motor type of player, bull rush a lot on the edge. He gets the job. He hits a lot of them, and it's
a lot of effort sacks.
And it's not a joke. These aren't jokes. This is describing this guy to a T.
Are you just trying to get on Pardon My Take? Are you just looking for a role there?
I'm interested, guys. If you're listening right now, but
I talked to PFT
your thoughts? Yeah,
down at the Super Bowl, so I'm sure. I think he's an avid.
Now.
I think he's an avid listener. PFT commenter. Those guys are big now. They're doing ESPN stuff and everything. They're all over the place.
Have you watched any of Dimmick though?
So. I've seen enough. I've seen a little bit of Dimmick. Yeah, and I have to do more work on him. And
I mean, there's no way he goes high. Like he's not going to be a first or second round or even.
But he's a guy you want with that type of production. You bring him in because a lot of that translates. And here's where we've had success, Mike. We're going to talk about it later on in our scouting report reviews. We've had success. We only have 2 years of data. We have 3 years of data now, 2 draft classes going onto the NFL. We've had a lot of success with our highest graded defensive linemen translating to the NFL. Dimmick is one of those ridiculously high graded defensive linemen that we're going to be higher on him than most based off those grades. One other name is Dietrich Wise from Arkansas. I need to highlight him because I put him on our breakout player list or top 101 list coming into the season. I thought he was going to put a season together that made him look like a first-round pick. I think it was a little bit disappointing, but still very productive. I thought he was going to play more snaps. He still only played about 500 snaps this past season, and extremely productive, put a lot of pressures the last 2 years. What I like to do with a guy that's only played part-time is kind of add up his last 2 years. When you add up his last 2 years in about a season's worth of production, about 900 snaps, 17 sacks, 24 QB hits, 49 hurries. That's ridiculous production for Dietrich Wise. 6'6", 270. He can move around the defensive line. I think he gets lost in the mix a little bit because he's been outstanding when he's been on the field.
No, that's a really good call, and I just don't understand what had to happen at Arkansas for him to get that few snaps while he was coming off the field at all.
He played 375. So he played 375 snaps in 2015. I projected him to be more of a 700, 800 snap guy in his final season, and it was still only 500 snaps, under 500 snaps. So I don't know exactly what happened there, but he played the run well according to our numbers.
He's not limited at all.
So. Right. So he's a guy, again, lost in the mix a little bit, but very, very productive when he's been on the field. And that was the same logic we used with Chris Jones, your boy, last year.
He's a freak.
He's a freak. And he showed it this year, right?
Yeah.
Do we have an applause? Soundbite here? Taylor, get some applause for Mike.
I'll take
Chris Jones Love, your number 3 player.
Number 3 player, and I don't think I was wrong. I think he lived up to everything I thought he did. So.
He was outstanding, but one of the ways we looked at him, we said he played 600 snaps last year, maybe 300 the year before. You combine those 2 seasons, and his production looked similar to, say, a DeForest Buckner over the course of one season. So when you kind of add that up and you see what these part-time guys do in our grading system, it really highlights guys like a Chris Jones.
Yes.
And he was outstanding this year as a rookie with Kansas City.
Love him. All right, well, let's move on from the edge class and go into what Steve just mentioned earlier, some of our segments here. We're trying out some segments for the first time on the PFF podcast. Going to do some new stuff.
Need some feedback on these segments.
So tell us if you like the segments, if you don't like the segments, which ones you like.
Are we doing the Bachelor recap today, or has that?
Did you want to? I didn't put it in the schedule, but we can talk about it.
We can add it in at the end. I'm just curious, just for beta testing.
I can't believe Whitney and Danielle both got ousted on the
Maybe I should watch The Bachelor so that I can contribute to the segment next week.
You should. Okay, we'll watch it next Monday.
Okay, sorry. I didn't mean to interrupt. Scouting reports.
First one, scouting reports. So we're going to go through some of our old scouting reports throughout the years. Ones we got right, ones we got wrong, and say, what the hell were we thinking at the time? So, topical.
More right than wrong, I think.
Topical here. Some guys that stood out in the Super Bowl. Couple that we had graded well. Couple that we'd had not graded so well. So, first one, Trey Flowers was our boy from the start. We talked about him. What we said, here was a little excerpt from our scouting report.
2014 class, right?
2014. While other players here might be expected to jump in and be explosive threats wide off the edge, Flowers brings a different but very complete and still valuable game. A powerful threat over the tight end. He's a strong run defender, able to control the edge, to disrupt ball carriers, as well as shedding to make stops. What we need to see more from him is his ability to generate pressure from the interior to ensure that he stays on the field as a 3-down player.
Who wrote that back in the day?
That's a good question. I think it was Ben Stockwell.
Ben.
Director of Analysis.
Director of Analysis, Ben. That's a good recap.
I was going to say,
or a good scouting report by Ben.
That one was one, like we talked about, the production trumped maybe a lack of some traits, a lack of some bursts, a lack of some perceived athleticism that he didn't have, why he fell to the third round. We had him as a first-round grade, and I think
we did.
He's lived up to that at this point, would you say?
He has, and this is similar to Derek Barnett because Barnett's probably a better athlete, slightly better athlete, I think, than Flowers, but Flowers had so much power in his hands, so much power when he attacked blockers. That's why he was one of our top-graded run defenders. He was the top-graded run defender in the nation in 2014, and his overall grade was up similar to Joey Bosa that particular year, and that was why we went out on a limb and said this is a first-round type of player. He goes in the fourth round to New England, plays only 4 snaps in 2015 in what was essentially a redshirt year, comes in this year 726 snaps, including the playoffs, just comes off a 3-sack Super Bowl, which gave him 10 sacks on the entire season, all of which came from Week 8 and beyond. Yeah. So from Week 8 through the end of the year, through the Super Bowl, 10 sacks, 13 hits, and 21 hurries. So he played strong run defense, rushed the passer pretty well, and he did it a lot from the interior. He played a lot of zero-tech, nose tackle in pass rush situations, rushed on the interior, and I think he's lived up to what we considered a first-round type of player, and we called that one of the steals of the draft back in 2014. 4th round to the Patriots, absolute steal in Trey Flowers.
All right, on to the next guy, another guy who dominated in the Super Bowl, Grady Jarrett, Falcons nose tackle. A lot of people overlooked him because they thought, this a 6-foot, 300-pounder couldn't be a nose tackle in the NFL.
We weren't alone in liking him. I think a lot of people, Twitter, a lot of the internet community liked him, but the NFL.
The fact is, he fell to the 5th round, which is incredible value for what they got. Our little excerpt here is Jarrett, without question, has some of the best tape for the interior defensive linemen in this class. He is a threat on all 3 downs, and his only limitation seems to be his lack of height. And I think that really is a thing, though. Lack of height it's still in the NFL in terms of draft-wise, in terms of even what we see with salaries with guys like Mike Daniels, Jarrell Casey. They fall in the draft, they fall salary-wise, but they continue to be ridiculously productive.
Once you're in the NFL, the production is what most matters. I mean, once you're in the NFL, though, your production, it doesn't matter. Like, if you've shown that you can win in the NFL, that's all that matters. I understand in the draft, in the draft community, you say, well, maybe that gets that gets used against him. Look, Jarrett hasn't been Aaron Donald. He's not Aaron Donald, but he's a disruptive interior pass rusher. He's also coming off a 3-sack Super Bowl, so this is very timely. We had a first-round grade on Jarrett as well. He's been strong against the run, and he's played more of a nose tackle role. They started to play him more at 3 technique, but he's playing nose tackle as this undersized 6-foot, 290-pounder. That's not what we expected.
And probably the best pass rushing nose tackle in the NFL right now, just because there's not a lot of pass rushing nose tackles to begin with. So if he can even provide a little, that's more than most teams are getting out of their nose tackle.
In last year, he's played 1,030 snaps in his 2 years, so that's a little bit around a season's worth of action. And for us, very good grade against the run, very good grade as a pass rusher. So I think he's pretty much living up to his first-round grade that we gave him there as well in 2014. So defensive lineman, we did okay.
Now, one that we missed from this past draft.
Cut.
I don't want to say we 100% missed because he's only a rookie, or was only a rookie this year, but the 250th player on our big board last year.
Which was almost by just a...
doing him a favor. A little bit of a throwaway even to get him on there. And that's Deion Jones, the linebacker from LSU last year.
Josh Norris, you listening?
I was going to say, I'll read what we wrote. An athletic freak whose performance never matched the numbers, graded negatively in coverage and versus the run, though he did make the play of the week during the Senior Bowl practices when he broke up a crossing route in cover 3.
It's completely against our nature to take one play and extract it, but perhaps we should have. And the reason why is this play so important? Why is the crossing route against cover 3 so important to us, Mike?
Because it gets busted probably 5 to 6 times a week.
In the NFL.
Maybe more in the NFL.
Every single week.
We're going to our defensive expert, Bobby Slowick, and asking him who the hell was supposed to be in coverage on this play because it looked like no one was.
Because every linebacker bites on play action and who's supposed to cover this route. And Deion Jones made this play in the Senior Bowl where he did cover the route. He didn't bite on play action, and he made a great play on the ball on a crossing route against cover 3, which is like a linebacker kryptonite. But here's what we had for a grade on him last year. We had 17 missed tackles, and we had a very poor grade against the run, including a 5 missed tackle outing against Alabama. We had struggles in coverage, where I do think he got lost quite a bit in coverage at LSU. So we had a poor grade there. Where he did excel, though, was as a pass rusher. And, pass rushing for a linebacker, that's different from what we were talking about earlier. That's not lining up and beating an offensive tackle. It's blitzing. It's using that burst and that speed, which he has. 5 sacks, 9 hits, and 11 hurries, and a very good pass rush grade his last year at LSU. So, that was a positive for Jones, but we just didn't see him as a player. I saw him as a player that's going to get washed out of run plays. That's going to have some issues.
I don't think we're wrong about calling him somewhat of a liability against the run. He wasn't great by any means against the run this year, still below average in that regard. So, but you can't overlook playmaking, linebackers in coverage, guys that can get their hands on balls, guys that can make interceptions, break up passes. Led all linebackers with 7 pass breakups this season.
He was very good.
And we should have seen that with the crosser in cover 3. If anyone from now on in college makes that play, they're going to go in the top 3 rounds.
I mean, we have a separate chat just for plays that are made, on crossers on cover 3. It's got like two words in there, but it really is. It was a spectacular play that perhaps should have given us a little bit of bit of foreshadowing.
Gone and reviewed, but. So, miss on Deion Jones, hit on Trey, hit on Grady. We'll take 2 out of 3 for this week.
That was for you, Josh Norris. That was your boy. That was Josh Norris of Roto World. That was his boy, Deion Jones. He gives us crap for it all the time still. Hey, you guys missed on Deion Jones. We're admitting it, at least right now, we've missed on him so far, unless he misses 20 tackles next year, Quan Alexander style.
All right, on to scouting buzzword of the week. Steve hinted at it earlier.
What do you have?
And this is a great buzzword because it gets thrown around like just willy-nilly during draft time for edge players, and it's bend.
What does bend mean to you, Mike?
Bend to me, and I love making basketball analogies because I had never played football. I played basketball growing up. So bend to me is the ability to drive the baseline. If you can drive baseline when a guy is leaning on you to try to push you out of bounds, but you can stay in bounds, that is bend.
It's balance. It goes back to your balance.
It comes back. It definitely is balance. Like they go hand in hand, but it's the ability to play at an angle, at a body angle that a lot of guys can't. It's a flexibility and that sort of thing that a lot of guys don't have that are 260 pounds.
Where does ankle flexion come into bend, or is that just a whole separate buzzword?
That's another buzzword that we'll hit in another week. But talk to me about bend, Steve. What does bend mean to you?
What does bend mean to me? I mean, you see Derek Barnett actually do this for a guy that's supposed to be less athletic than these other guys. I think it's, our boss, calling the boss out, Chris Collinsworth. There was a NBC a couple of years ago. They had this great graphic, and they showed the angle at which DeMarcus Ware was rushing and some other top edge rushers, and they were getting at this 45-degree angle, getting around the corner. I think that's what analysts are trying to find. Can you get to that 45-degree angle, which lowers your pad so that you can get under the offensive
Just makes it
that's
less surface area for the offensive tackle to basically push you with.
So it's a buzzword, but I think it's relevant. I don't know if it's that overrated.
I don't think it's
flexibility to be able to.
There are more ways to win than simply bend,
right?
But having it with explosiveness is a valuable trait.
It's a good combination. And now what we do,
having it itself isn't necessarily valuable. If you're slow and can play at an angle, you still get pushed out of place. But if you have some juice in you and you have some bend,
because you get because you get even with the left tackle, or you get even with the right tackle, and then you can get under their pads instead of getting blocked and washed out of the play.
And I think the prototype there is Von Miller, Cameron Wake, guys like that. That's what we're talking about. DeMarcus Ware,
Alex McAllister. Remember that Alex McAllister move that you said you've never seen?
I was gonna say that's the perfect example. Alex McAllister last year, the outside linebacker from Florida, was 6'6", but had a 4.85 40. So he just had no real explosiveness.
And he used to do this ridiculous move where he wouldn't even use his hands. He would just get duck. Super low, duck, and get around, and kind of had bend, but.
And that just doesn't power. That doesn't necessarily help you any if you're going up against an NFL level tackle.
And he had no power. He had 0 bull rush pressures.
He was a wide receiver.
So that was all he did look like a wide receiver. Developmental prospect in the NFL right now. Is it Philadelphia that has him?
I believe so. All right.
So you don't love bend as a word, but there's some relevance there.
No, I think it just gets way overused. People act like it's the end-all, be-all for guys. It's important. It's not the end-all, be-all.
It's not.
Leave it at that. All right. Another segment that we think you'll like, that I think Steve will like, because it is called Handicapping the Draft. Every week I will be giving Steve some odds on something that will occur in the draft, a proposition, so to speak. And this week, I put the odds on Mitch Trubisky going as the first quarterback off the board at minus 150. And the opposite side of that is the field at even money. Who are you taking, Steve? And how much money are you putting on that bet?
I have to put money on it, too?
Oh, yeah. We're going to settle up afterwards.
Oh, I didn't know we were putting money on this. All right. You're keeping tally
Yeah, I'm keeping
thing?
tabs of this.
So
Guys, you can feel free at home to hop in on this, too. Actually, I probably shouldn't say that. That might be illegal. You guys can't hop in at home. Sorry.
Yeah, you cannot. Nobody's gambling with us. We're not DFS. Or is it weekly fantasy? Anyway, so I got minus 150 for just Trubisky going number one, or the field at even.
Yes.
I will take the field at even, and I'm willing to put $100 on that.
Okay.
And I like Mitch Trubisky. I think the NFL will like Mitch Trubisky. There are rumors that he'll be 6'1", which is such a great. That's just a great draft rumor.
Yes.
There's a rumor that this guy is 6'1". Like, we don't even know what this guy's height is.
I was gonna say a provable fact.
Yes,
there's a rumor,
but it's a rumor about it, and it's gonna completely affect this guy's draft stock.
Yes.
If he's 6'1", the sky is falling. If he's 6'2", we're okay.
It will. Like,
and that's really going to be a big factor.
Like, I think it will if he's 6'1" instead of 6'2".
But based off the rumor, the fact that he's a one-year starter, and the fact that I think that the other quarterbacks, they have some questions. Deshaun Watson has questions, and Deshaun Kaiser has questions, and Patrick Mahomes has questions. I'm still going to go with the field and say somebody else emerges to go above Mitch Trubisky.
$100. I'll take that $100 after the draft when Trubisky goes.
Who puts $100? And if I had to bet today, though, I'd still, straight up, I would say that Trubisky would go, but at the field,
you don't like the odds.
There's a lot in the field.
I was going to say, that's why we play the odds.
And now time for what's already probably our favorite segment of the week, and that is Nathan Yonke, our Director of Analytics. Nathan Yonke's mind-blowing stat of the week. So, Nathan, what do you have for us this week?
Sure. Michigan's cornerback Jordan Lewis is the only cornerback in the FBS to allow a catch rate lower than 48% each of the last 3 seasons. Lewis has allowed a catch rates of 41%, 37%, and 32% each of the last 3 seasons, which has consistently been among the best in college football.
There you have it. Mind-blowing stat. Thank you, Nathan, as always.
This actually leads in perfectly to my hot take of the draft season.
I'm glad that Mike's hot take stays as a part of this.
It's ubiquitous.
Thing.
So this one is actually, it might not even be that hot. It's a good take. This is going to be 2011 all over again, this draft. It's setting up to be, and I just think.
What does that mean?
So 2011, one of the best drafts of all time. It featured Von Miller, A.J. Green, Patrick Peterson, Julio Jones, Alden Smith, Tyron Smith, J.J. Watt, all in the top 15 picks, Robert Quinn. But if you drafted a quarterback in one of those top 15 picks, you got, Cam Newton number 1 overall, but you also could have gotten Jake Locker, Blaine Gabbert, or Christian Ponder. And so basically, if you're taking a quarterback in this first round, you are passing on a guy who's probably going to be an elite level talent in the NFL at the top of this draft. I just think there is not a quarterback that I would be willing to pass up for what is such a deep and talented draft at key positions like cornerback, like defensive end. So I think it's 2011 all over again.
I don't hate it. I think that's actually a reasonable take.
Damn it.
Sorry. That's a lukewarm take by Mike this week. We need something hotter for next week because the class is loaded. I consider this a class to reshape your defense, whether it's edge defenders that we discussed earlier today, cornerbacks or safeties. If you're the Philadelphia Eagles and you need cornerbacks, you just want to reload that position. And I think the NFL, you're trying to find 3 corners, right? You're at least trying to find 3 corners for your team.
You have to.
I think this is the perfect draft to double up. Grab one in the first, grab one in the second. Different types of corners. You have long, man, press type corners. You have zone corners. You have corners that are going to convert to safeties. Then you have safeties that can play center field, that can play all over the field, as in the box, play deep. This is a great place to revamp your secondary, to grab an edge defender, and then on the other side of the ball, maybe get a nice tight end, running back. I think it's a great class to load up on talented players, and if you do draft a quarterback, there's a lot of risk involved. So I don't think you're crazy. I don't know if it gets to the 2011. Can you read those names off again? This 2011 draft was absurd, other than the Christian Ponders and Blaine Gabberts of the world.
I'll just read through the top 20 here because it's all ridiculous. Number 1, Cam Newton, Von Miller, Marcel Darius, A.J. Green, Patrick Peterson, Julio Jones, Alden Smith, Jake Locker, Tyron Smith, Blaine Gabbert, J.J. Watt, Christian Ponder, Nick Fairley, Robert Quinn, Mike Pouncey, Ryan Kerrigan, Nate Solder, Corey Legit, Prince Amukamara, and Adrian Claiborne. It's probably the best top 20 of all time, possibly.
There's only a couple questionable
there are going to be multiple
there.
Hall of Famers in that group.
That was incredible.
Yeah.
That was incredible.
So, 11 all over again.
You're not crazy there. You're not crazy. It's going to be tough to actually duplicate the results that the 2011 class got. But I think the theme is correct. Yes. It's going to be a risky quarterback class.
Well, that will do it for us in this edition of the first edition of the PFF podcast. Tune in next week for more draft talk. We'll be going position by position. We'll be doing more segments. Let us know on Twitter. Let us know in the comments below on the website. Let us know anywhere you can find us what you like, what you don't like, and we'll adapt to you guys. We want you guys to have fun with this podcast as much as we do. So that's it for us. You guys have a good one.